This is going to be part one of our chapter on the Constitution, and we're going to begin by just pretty quickly looking at some of the main influences on what would become the Constitution of the United States. And keep in mind that this document was written during the Enlightenment period and was heavily influenced by British customs and traditions, because many of the key authors and delegates who attended the Constitutional Convention actually were from Great Britain or participated in government either in Great Britain or here in the American colonies. There were some key Enlightenment philosophers whose ideas our founding fathers definitely took and applied to the Constitution. When we talk about John Locke first introduced this concept of natural rights, and his three natural rights that he identified were life, liberty, and property. And he believed that the government's job is to protect those rights. And if you think about wording in both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, you will definitely see how Locke's ideas about natural rights and the job of the government have made their way into our Constitution. Looking at Baron de Montesquieu, a Frenchman who was alive during the Enlightenment, his main, I suppose, thought that we took and applied to our own government is the concept of separation of powers, which he believed created the ideal government because power does not exist solely in one part. By separating the powers, you have a system of checks and balances where all parts keep the others in check. And lastly, when we look at Rousseau, he introduced the concept of a social contract, where he did not believe power lied within the government or one single entity, but rather it lies in the community as a whole. And in order to keep a secure and stable society, individuals must surrender some rights to the government, who in turn will protect other guarantees and liberties. And that was the social contract, which, again, an agreement, unwritten agreement between the ruler and those in the community. The Founding Fathers also had different experiences in their short time in the American colonies, and again, these included being part of different local governments, and just from those experiences, they had ideas that they wanted to see applied to our government. And lastly, and probably one of the most significant influences on the writing of the Constitution was in fact the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. And so if we look quickly at the Articles of Confederation, this was our country's first attempt at writing a blueprint that would essentially lay out and define all the different parts of our government. Definitely, it was weak and ineffective, #hot mess, and to sum up in the most simple terms, it's because the states were too powerful. The Articles of Confederation created a unicameral national legislature where there was just one body and each state, regardless of size, had one vote. Also, all 13 states had to agree to amend the Articles. And if you think about it, you get 13 people of any kind, creed, race, ethnicity, background, it's going to be very difficult to get those 13 people to agree on one thing. So even the amendment process of the Articles was very weak and very ineffective. Some of the distinct weaknesses were that Congress did not have the power to tax the states directly. The power of taxation was actually left up to the states themselves, and you might imagine how unpopular it would be for a state legislature to make the decision to tax its people, especially since this comes on the heels of the colonists fighting for independence from Great Britain, whom they felt were who they felt were unfairly and unjustly taxing them without their representation. The Articles also did not create a judiciary system, a president, or any national currency. So in terms of unity or unifying all of the colonies, the Articles of Confederation did a very, very poor job. And something as simple as not even having a national currency. Think about moving from one state to the next. You would have to keep in mind of what currency was accepted, exchange rates, things like that. So again, to sum up the main weakness of the Articles, it effectively did not give enough power to the national government and instead gave far too much power to the state governments.